"There's a drug in your drink," she whispered. No preface, no smile, just 4 words dropped like a blade between crystal and breath. Lucia hadn't meant to get this close to Don Vito Castellano. She'd meant to pour, nod, and move. But 5 seconds earlier, as she crossed the floor with the bottle, the 2 men at booth 9 had leaned in, and one said, flat as a receipt, "Doses in his glass. When he says salute, you switch." The other answered, "Copy." That was it. No rain, no violins, just a plan. Lucia looked down at the tray she carried. 2 fresh Bordeaux stems, Prince wiped, one with a faint, oily smear at the rim that a normal eye would miss unless the light hit dead on. Her stomach dropped. She didn't break stride. She didn't look at booth 9. She reached Don Vito's table, tipped the bottle, and as his fingers came for the glass, she moved in, lips close to his ear. "There's a drug in your drink." His hand froze. The glass stopped an inch off the linen. The room kept talking, clinking, laughing, but the space between Lucia and Vito went silent, like a lifted needle. "How sure?" he asked, voice unchanged, eyes on the wine, not on her, not on anyone else. "Sure." She angled the tray, letting him see what she saw. The smear, nothing, everything. "Booth 9, left side. They said the switch happens on salute." He didn't turn his head. Ada. The woman standing at the bar did not look like security until she moved. Then she wasn't decor anymore. She was a line that went from Vito's table to everywhere at once. "Clear that glass," Vito said softly, quietly. Ada arrived without being seen to cross. She didn't touch the stem. She sniffed the rim 2 inches away, eyes narrowing by a millimeter. "Off," she said under her breath, and slid a linen under it as if polishing, lifting it onto the cloth as if it weighed a secret. "Gianni," Vito called to the owner, tone pleasant, volume normal. "A fresh bottle from the cage." "Subito," Gianni smiled, already moving. Lucia's hand shook, just once. Vito noticed that too. He noticed everything. The way the 2 men at booth 9 were suddenly very interested in their water, the way the bartender reached for a towel that wasn't there, the way the pianist repeated a chord because he'd missed the downbeat when Lucia spoke. "Finish pouring," Vito said, still the perfect guest. "My friends are thirsty." Lucia poured for the table, Vito's consigliere dom, his shoulders like wire. Marco, whose watch disappeared under his cuff every time he breathed. 2 other men who smiled too evenly. She didn't pour for Vito. He lifted his untouched glass, the clean one, and gave Lucia a look so quick it could be mistaken for courtesy. "Grazie," he said. Then he turned his face to the room. "Friends." He lifted the glass half an inch. "Tonight," Lucia's heart slammed. "Don't say it," she said, barely moving her mouth. "We remember to tip our wait staff," Vito finished lazily, not speaking the word that would have signaled the switch. The room laughed. His eyes didn't. "Eat, drink," he told his table. "Not that one." A ghost of a smile toward the linen-wrapped stem Ada held like a bomb. Ada passed the suspect glass to Luca at the bar, a man who wore barman like a disguise, and Luca slid it under the counter. A strip test appeared, touched, darkened a shade it shouldn't. He nodded once toward Ada. She nodded once toward Vito. Poison. Or worse, something that made a man forget the next hour and hand a pen to the wrong document. Booth 9 didn't leave. That told Lucia 2 things. There was a second move, and the first had been meant to be quiet. Her tray buzzed. No, her pocket. She slipped her hand into her apron and pressed the screen with her thumb without looking down. "Unknown number. Drink his sip for him, sweetheart." "Show us it's safe." Her skin went cold. Another message arrived before she could breathe. Or, "We ask your sister to do it." Lucia didn't have to look up to know booth 9 was watching her face. She didn't have to search to know the camera dot. Between the mirrors wasn't theirs. It was Vito's. And that whoever texted her had more than a plan. They had her name. Vito's voice arrived at her shoulder, as if he'd stepped into her pocket. "Something else?" She didn't nod. She did nothing a watcher could clip. She let the phone rest against the tray, screen hidden by her forearm, and placed the bottle down. "They want me to drink," she said, tone level, as if reciting specials. "Or they know my sister." Vito's smile didn't change. "Dom," he said, "we're doing the small room. Now." Dom didn't argue. He never argued in public. He stood, stretching like a man ready to go smoke, and took 2 steps toward the hallway that led to a private dining room used for proposals and problems. Vito rose a heartbeat later. "Friends," he announced to the nearest tables, "I'm going to ruin someone's night." Laughter he didn't wait for. He looked at Lucia. "Bring the bottle." "Of course," she said. Ada slid in on Lucia's other side. "Stay between us," she murmured. Eyes forward. They moved. Vito first, Lucia a half step behind his shoulder, Ada trailing. Marco fell off his chair like he'd forgotten his coat and appeared in the periphery, a hinge in a suit. The restaurant hummed, a polite organism pretending nothing interesting ever happened in public. Booth 9 stayed seated, which meant someone else was moving. The private room door clicked. Dom held it. Vito entered, then Lucia, then Ada, then the door shut. Sound cut to carpet and breath. Phone, Vito said. Lucia handed it over. He read the messages once. He didn't ask if she had a sister. He looked at Dom. 2 shooters if it goes loud, he said. 1 in the kitchen corridor, 1 outside the alley exit. The busboy is theirs. The bartender is ours. Booth 9 is a face. Real play is the switch, which failed, Dom said. Already dialing without moving his hands. Already pulling up eyes in places Lucia had never noticed. Plan B is to scare her into making Plan A look safe, Vito went on. The logic, crisp and cruel. Make her drink. Prove the glass is fine. We need the vial. We need the hands that touched it. We need the voice that typed, "Sister." Ada opened a leather kit that looked like a check presenter. Inside wasn't a pen. It was a fold of swabs, small vials, a pale strip of plastic with squares that turned colors when asked the right question. She pulled a new stem from a clean rack, poured a finger of the suspect bottle, the one they had not used, and touched the strip. 1 square bloomed faint blue. Sedative, Ada said. Benzos plus something custom. It won't kill. It will erase. Lucia's stomach turned. Why not kill him? Vito looked at her, and for the first time his voice had something like warmth under the steel. Because a dead man is a war. A soft man signs papers. The kind of betrayal that pays. Her phone buzzed in his hand again. He let it. He typed, "Quick, put it in my glass yourself if you're so brave. Set your timer. Watch me drink." Dom's eyebrow ticked. "You sure?" "What they want is control," Vito said. "What they fear is proof." Ada nodded. "We swap the decoys. We give them a show." He handed Lucia her phone back. "You are going to walk out with a single glass. You're going to put it in front of me at the main table. You're going to say, 'To family.' You're not going to flinch. And no one is drinking anything." Lucia swallowed. "They'll push. Let them push." He stepped closer, and the room shrank to his eyes and her pulse. "You saved my life with 4 words. Now you save your own with 10 toes and a straight spine. Do you understand?" She did. She hated that she did. "Yes." Ada placed the decoy glass in Lucia's hand. It weighed the same as the others. It wasn't the same. Its rim had been prepped with the faintest film of bittering agent, the taste of medicine without the medicine. "They'll see your mouth touch," Ada said. "You will not swallow. You will set it down. You will step back." Lucia nodded. "What about my sister?" Dom's phone chimed. He read, then his mouth flattened. "Sister's name is Eva. Lives on Birch." They did their homework. "Marco?" Vito said into the air. "On Birch," came a voice from nowhere and everywhere. His earpiece, the building itself, the net Vito carried with him like weather. 2 minutes. "Good," Vito said. "No more texts." He turned to Lucia. "You'll be with me until he says otherwise." He nodded at Dom. "That means if someone asks where you are, the answer is busy. If someone asks who you are, the answer is no one. If someone asks what you did, the answer is my job." "My job was pouring wine," Lucia said, softer than a breath. 5 minutes ago. "Your job," Vito said, "is seeing what others miss. That's why you heard it. That's why you're in this room." He took the decoy stem from her hand and set it back in her palm. His fingers brushed hers. They were warm, steady. "Ready?" he asked. "No," she said. Then, because fear had taught her about choices, yes. The door opened on Dom's hand. The private room emptied its quiet into the restaurant's polite noise. Lucia walked between Ada and Vito like a thread pulled through cloth. Booth 9 pretended to talk about soccer. The busboy pretended to polish a spoon he'd already polished. The pianist hit the chorus he always hit when he didn't know what else to do. Lucia set the glass in front of Don Vito. The table went still the way animals go still before a storm. "To family," she said. Words steady, face calm, heart a drum. Vito raised the glass. Booth 9 leaned forward. Somewhere, a phone lit up to record. Vito's eyes never left Lucia's. He tipped the rim to his mouth and stopped half a heartbeat before the touch, as if listening to something only he could hear. Across the room, the busboy turned toward the kitchen exit. Ada's hand shifted. Booth 9 stood. The glass kept moving. The glass kept moving, tilting just enough for everyone watching to believe Don Vito Castellano had taken the sip. Booth 9 leaned forward, hungry eyes glued to his lips. The busboy froze halfway through the kitchen door, hand still on the handle. Aria's lungs locked in her chest. Then Vito set the glass down, untouched. His smile wide enough to look genuine, sharp enough to slice air. "Perfect," he said, tone velvet. "Smooth, strong. Just how I like it." Ada caught the signal. With the grace of someone who could kill in silence, she slid the tainted glass away and replaced it with a clean one from her tray. To outsiders, it looked like flawless service. To Booth 9, it was confirmation their plan had worked. Lucia saw the relief ripple through them. The tiniest exhale, the loosening of shoulders, the smirk tugging one corner of the middleman's mouth. They thought he drank it. They thought the sedative was already crawling into his blood. Vito didn't look their way. He clinked glasses with Dom, then Marco, then let his own glass rest untouched on the linen. His bodyguard sipped. He didn't. He never did when danger smelled this close. "Lucia," he said suddenly, voice pitched for only his table. Another bottle. Her throat dried. Yes, signor. She turned toward the wine station, but Ada's hand brushed her wrist, halting her. A whisper. Keep eyes on booth 9. Don't blink. Lucia obeyed. The man with the school ring pulled out his phone under the table, thumb flicking furiously. The busboy disappeared into the kitchen. The third man, broader, gold chain glinting under his collar, tapped his napkin like a silent countdown. Her phone buzzed in her apron. She didn't want to look, but she did. Unknown number. You should have swallowed it for him. Another vibration. Too late now. Watch what happens. Her pulse hammered so loud she thought the whole room must hear it. Vito saw her face pale. His smile never faltered. Dom, he murmured, cutting through the chatter around them. Now. Dom's thin frame unfolded. He stood, stretching casually, and strolled toward the hallway as if bored. Marco pushed back his chair with the slow menace of a man about to do anything his boss asked. Ada stayed a statue, Lucia whispered. They're moving. The techs, they know I saw. Vito's dark eyes found hers. Then you don't leave my side again. Before she could answer, the busboy burst from the kitchen. Too fast, tray in hand, his nervous smile pasted on wrong. He wasn't delivering food. He was delivering distraction. Wine for table 8, he barked, voice too loud, hands shaking. The tray tilted. Bottles crashed. Glass exploded across the floor. Diners gasped, chairs scraped. Half the room turned their heads. And in that sliver of chaos, the 2 men from booth 9 stood. One went for his jacket. The other moved toward the exit, phone to his ear. Down! Marco's shout thundered as his gun cleared leather. Lucia froze. She'd never seen a weapon so close, never heard the metallic whisper of a slide racked back. Diners screamed, ducking under tables. The pianist vanished off his stool. The man with the ring had a pistol halfway free when Ada's hand clamped his wrist. The crack of bone made Lucia flinch. The gun clattered to the floor, kicked under a chair by Ada's boot. She wrenched his arm behind his back and slammed him face first onto the linen. The broad man bolted toward the door. Marco's shot punched the wood inches above his head. Splinters flew. He stumbled, hands raised. Sit, Marco ordered. Or lie down forever. He sat. The busboy dropped what was left of his tray and ran, straight into Dom. The consigliere's thin frame moved like wire. He hooked the kid by the collar and drove him into the wall with deceptive gentleness. The phone tumbled out of the boy's pocket, screen still lit with a chat window full of instructions. Silence slammed back into the room, heavy and unreal. Diners crouched behind tables, peering out wide-eyed. The air smelled of spilled wine, gunpowder, and fear. Vito hadn't moved. He still sat at the head of his table, hand resting on the stem of a clean glass, smile carved in stone. Lucia, he said softly, evenly. Pour me another, a fresh one. Her hands shook as she obeyed, the bottle sloshing against the rim before she steadied herself. She filled his glass. He raised it. To loyalty, he said. His voice carried through the stunned restaurant, smoother than the wine, sharper than the gunshot still echoing in everyone's ears. He drank half in one swallow, no hesitation. When he set it down, the room exhaled. Diners clapped nervously, half convinced they'd just witnessed theater, not a near execution. But Lucia knew better. She'd seen the vial, heard the whisper, felt the text buzzing threats against her blood. Ada dragged the broken wrist man toward the private room. Marco kicked the broad one to his feet and shoved him after. Dom Frog marched the busboy, still whining, still swearing he didn't know what was in the bottle. Vito rose at last. He buttoned his jacket with casual grace, looked around the restaurant and smiled like a king who owned the night. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, your meals are on the house. Enjoy. Applause. Nervous laughter. Relief. But his hand brushed lightly against Lucia's elbow as he passed, guiding her with him toward the hallway. His voice was a whisper only she could hear. You saved my life once, he said. Now they'll come for yours. That means you're mine until this is finished. Her breath caught. She wanted to ask finished how, but she didn't dare. She followed him, deeper into the restaurant's private rooms, as the captured men were dragged in and the door locked behind them. The game wasn't over. It had only just begun. The private dining room smelled of oak and old money, but tonight it was just another battlefield. Ada shoved the broken wrist man into a chair, Marco forced the broad one down beside him, and Dom slammed the busboy against the paneled wall so hard the sconces rattled. Vito walked in last, slow and deliberate, like a priest entering confession. He shut the door himself, and the click of the latch was heavier than a gunshot. Lucia hovered near the doorway, clutching the empty wine bottle like a weapon she wasn't sure how to use. She wanted to melt into the wallpaper, but Vito's earlier whisper rang in her ears. "That means you're mine until this is finished." "Names?" Vito said quietly. The man with the ring sneered through the pain of his twisted arm. "You already know who we are. Humor me." Vito's tone could have been mistaken for politeness if not for the glint in his eyes. "Vincent Moretti," Dom supplied without being asked. "Known as Scar, former enforcer for the Torino cousins in Chicago. His wrist tells the truth." Scar's good hand balled into a fist. "You think this changes anything? You drink that glass, you'd already be drooling on the table." Vito leaned close, his voice silk. "But I didn't, which means you're drooling here instead." Scar spat at the floor. Ada's heel pressed on his injured wrist until he grunted and looked away. Vito turned to the busboy, whose face was pale with terror. "And you?" I was just told to put the vial in the ice," the boy stammered. "They said I'd make good money. I didn't even know what it was." Dom plucked the phone off the floor and scrolled. Instructions, timestamps, pictures. They sent him everything. He knew. The boy's eyes filled with tears. "Please, I didn't mean—" Vito cut him off with a look. "Meaning doesn't matter. Actions do." Lucia flinched at the coldness of his tone. She wanted to speak up, to say the boy was young, maybe scared, maybe used. But the memory of those text messages, "We know your sister. Drink up," froze her tongue. Marco jerked his chin at the broad man. "Goldie Russo. Those teeth aren't fake." Debt collector turned hitter. "Likes breaking bones more than paying bills." Goldie smirked, gold glinting under the chandelier. "What can I say? I've got expensive taste." Vito stepped between them like a conductor before an orchestra. "So 3 men, 1 vial. One plan that failed. And 1 problem for me to solve." Scar leaned forward, breathing hard. "You can't touch us. We're connected. Kill us here. You start a war with Chicago." "Chicago already started it," Dom murmured. Vito's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I don't need to kill you tonight, Scar. I only need to know who sent you." Scar pressed his lips together. Ada twisted his arm again. The wet crack made Lucia's stomach turn. He gritted his teeth through the pain. "Carmine Torino. He wanted proof you could bleed. That's all." "Carmine," Vito repeated softly, like tasting a wine he'd once enjoyed and now found sour. Always too ambitious for his own good. Lucia's chest tightened. She didn't know Carmine, didn't know Chicago politics, but the way Vito said his name carried history. The busboy sobbed. "Please, I didn't know it was Mafia business. I have a sister." Vito's gaze slid to Lucia, and her heart stopped. "A sister," the word cut deep. Did he already know about Eva? Of course he did. Men like him always knew. He moved closer to her, speaking so low only she heard. "They used your blood as leverage. That makes it personal." She shook her head faintly. "Don't hurt her." "I won't," he said simply. "But they will try, which means you stay with me, or you'll both vanish." Her knees felt weak. She gripped the wine bottle tighter. Scar laughed then, a jagged sound. "Look at you, Castellano, hiding behind waitresses now. She's your weakness. We'll carve her name on your grave." Before anyone else could react, Vito's hand shot out and wrapped Scar's throat. He didn't squeeze. He didn't need to. His calm stare was enough to chill the air in the room. "You almost made me say salute tonight," Vito said softly. "That mistake cost you your freedom. Don't make another that cost you your tongue." Scar's face darkened. He stopped laughing. Vito released him and turned to Dom. "Send word to Carmine. Tell him his little experiment failed. And tell him he just made it to the top of my list." Dom nodded, already typing. Goldie shifted, chains rattling. "So what happens to us?" Vito smiled without warmth. "That depends on whether you're more useful alive or silent." Ada dragged Scar to his feet. Marco pulled Goldie up. The busboy whimpered as Dom yanked him toward the back corridor. "Take them to the cellar," Vito ordered. "I'll decide later." The men were marched out, their protests swallowed by the thick walls. The door shut, leaving only Vito and Lucia. Lucia had never seen a house like this in her life. The Castellano estate rose behind iron gates and manicured hedges like a palace airlifted into the modern city. Marble lions flanked the entrance, stone eyes watching as the black sedan rolled through. Guards in dark suits stood at discreet angles on the lawn, radios tucked into their collars, weapons invisible but inevitable inevitable. Lucia sat stiff in the back seat, her canvas bag on her lap. She had packed exactly what Vito told her to. One change of clothes, her work shoes, and nothing else. Even the photo of her and Eva taped to the fridge felt too dangerous to take. She kept her hands tight on the bag strap, as if that simple canvas tether was the only piece of her old life she had left. "Breathe," Ada murmured from beside her. The woman hadn't stopped shadowing her since the night at La Fenice. "You look like you're walking into your own funeral." "Maybe I am," Lucia muttered. Ada's expression didn't change. Better this than the alternative. Scar wasn't lying. Carmine Torino doesn't leave loose ends. You'd already be in a ditch if Vito hadn't claimed you. Claimed. The word burned. The car stopped at the grand steps. Marco opened her door and offered a hand. She hesitated before taking it, acutely aware that every guard's gaze tracked her like a spotlight. Inside, the estate smelled of polished wood and expensive cigars. Chandeliers glittered above sweeping staircases. Portraits of long-dead Castellanos glared from gilded frames. It was beautiful, overwhelming, and suffocating. "Don Vito is waiting in the study," Marco said. "This way." Lucia followed him through a maze of corridors. Each turn revealed another guard, another camera, another reminder that freedom had been traded for protection. Finally, Marco opened a heavy double door and gestured her inside. The study was less intimidating than the rest of the house, but only barely. A mahogany desk stretched across the room, papers neatly stacked, maps pinned to the wall behind it. Vito stood at the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the forearms. He turned as she entered, dark eyes sweeping her like a scan. "You came," he said simply. "You didn't leave me much choice." A shadow of a smile touched his lips. "Good. Choice is a luxury in our world. Survival is the priority." He gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. "Sit." She did, perching on the edge like she might need to run. Vito poured 2 glasses of deep red wine. He pushed one toward her. "Relax, it's clean." Lucia wrapped her fingers around the stem but didn't drink. "I don't want to get used to this." "To what?" "This." She gestured to the desk, the wine, the fortress around them. "Being part of this." Vito studied her for a long moment. "You already are. The moment you warned me, you crossed a line. You can't go back." Her throat tightened. "So what happens now? You lock me here until Carmine gives up?" Vito leaned forward, elbows on the desk, his gaze sharp. "Carmine won't give up. Men like him only stop when they're stopped, which means we end this on our terms." Lucia swallowed. "We?" "Yes." His voice softened, but it carried weight. "You're bait and shield both. You've seen their faces. You're their excuse to come back. Which means you're also the trap we'll close on them." She shook her head. "I didn't ask for this." "No one asks," Vito cut in, his tone steel. "Do you think I asked to inherit this family when my father was gunned down in front of me? Do you think Ada asked to bury her brother after Carmine's men slit his throat? We don't ask, Lucia. We survive. And survival demands loyalty." The word hit like a chain tightening around her throat. "Loyalty," she repeated. Vito's gaze didn't waver. "To me, to this family. It's the only way you live through what's coming." Silence stretched. Outside the window, rain tapped the glass like fingernails. Finally, Lucia spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "And my sister?" "She's already under guard," Vito said. "Marco sent men last night. She's safe. For now." Relief shuddered through her, chased quickly by dread. If Eva was under Castellano protection, she was tied to this world too. Vito watched her reaction closely. "You understand now. You're not just a waitress anymore. You're a piece on the board. And pieces move when I say." Her stomach turned. "What if I refuse?" For the first time, he leaned back and laughed. Not cruelly, just like someone who'd heard a child threaten to stop the tide. "Then Carmine finds you in a week and puts you in the ground." "That is refusal." Lucia stared at him, at the gold watch gleaming on his wrist, at the faint scar under his chin. He looked like a man who had carved his life out of stone and dared the world to take it back. Finally, she lifted the wineglass and drank. Just one swallow, but enough to make his lips curve. "There," Vito said. "You're already learning." The door opened. Dom entered, thin and sharp as ever. He placed a folder on the desk. "Surveillance from last night. Carmine's people made contact with Scar's crew weeks ago. He's been planning this move carefully." Vito flipped through the photos. Grainy shots of Scar in a Chicago bar, Goldie on a payphone, the busboy meeting a man in a parking garage. Each page tightened the knot in Lucia's chest. "They won't stop," Dom said. "Even after last night. Especially after last night. Carmine hates being humiliated. He'll come harder." "Good," Vito said, voice calm. "Let him. We'll be ready." Dom nodded. "The Venetian Hotel. Tomorrow night. Their annual gala. Carmine's men won't resist. It's too public to kill you, but perfect to snatch her." He glanced at Lucia. Her stomach dropped. "Me?" Vito's eyes locked on hers. "Yes, you'll be visible. Protected. But vulnerable enough to tempt them. They'll try again, and when they do, we end this." Her grip tightened on the wineglass. "You're using me as bait." "I'm using you as the reason they'll make mistakes," Vito corrected. "And I'm keeping you alive while they do." Lucia looked at him, at the absolute certainty in his eyes. She wanted to scream, to run, to fight, but all she could whisper was, "And if I don't play along?" Vito's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then you die, and so does your sister." The Venetian hotel glittered like a diamond in the middle of the city. Gold chandeliers, velvet drapes, marble floors polished so clean the reflections looked like ghosts. Outside, limousines lined the curb. Paparazzi flashes strobed like lightning against the night. Inside, 500 of the city's most powerful names were sipping champagne and pretending they weren't all watching each other. Lucia had never worn a dress like this. Midnight blue silk clung to her figure, slit high enough to reveal legs she didn't want anyone to notice. Ada had chosen it, sharp-eyed and unyielding. "You need to look like someone worth stealing," she'd said. And now Lucia stood at the top of the ballroom staircase, her hand looped through Don Vito Castellano's arm, and every eye in the room turned to her exactly as Ada had predicted. Her throat tightened. "Bait," she thought. "I'm dressed like bait." "Breathe," Vito murmured beside her, his hand warm against the small of her back. To everyone else, he looked like a man showing off his beautiful companion. To her, he was an anchor dragging her deeper. Dom's voice crackled softly in the tiny earpiece Ada had fitted her with. "South corner, Scar just arrived. He's trying to look like a donor, but he's scanning exits. Tommy's pretending to text in the lobby. Goldie's outside in a black sedan." Engine running, Lucia's stomach flipped. They were here, all of them. Vito guided her down the stairs, smiling like a king greeting his court. "Right on schedule," he whispered. Servers in crisp uniforms glided past with trays of champagne and canapes. Guests in glittering gowns laughed too loudly at jokes that weren't funny. A charity auctioneer droned on about vacation packages and priceless art. Beneath it all, the trap tightened. "Remember," Vito said as they reached the dance floor, "you're never alone. Every exit has eyes. Every vent carries sound. They'll think they have you. They'll never know they're already surrounded." Lucia nodded, but her heart hammered like a trapped bird. The orchestra struck up a waltz. Vito swept her into motion with ease, his hand firm on her waist, his steps precise. To onlookers, it was romance. To her, it was rehearsal for survival. "In 5 minutes," Vito murmured as they turned. "I'll excuse myself for a call. You'll be alone for 10. That's when they'll move." Her pulse spiked. 10 minutes? 10 is all we need. His dark eyes caught hers, steel beneath the warmth. "They need you alive. Remember that. They'll be careful. And when they try, my people close in." Dom's voice crackled again. Scar's moving toward the service corridor. Tommy's circling the terrace doors. Goldie just stepped out of the car. Lucia's breath caught. She could feel them closing in. The song swelled. Vito spun her, his palm steady, his smile radiant for the crowd. "Trust me," he said softly. Then he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed it with theatrical charm. "Caramella, don't go anywhere," he said loudly enough for the nearby guests to hear. Then he released her and strode across the ballroom, every inch the man who owned the night. And just like that, she was alone. The orchestra shifted to another waltz. Guests paired off, laughing, gossiping. To anyone watching, she was just another woman catching her breath near the railing. But she felt it, eyes on her, circling, hunting. Dom's voice came again. "Hold position, Lucia. They're aligning." She turned slowly toward the terrace, as if needing air. The October night spilled in, cool, scented with city smoke. A handful of guests lingered, enjoying the skyline view. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" a voice said. She turned. Scar stood a few feet away in a tuxedo, glass of champagne in his good hand, smile carved into his scarred face. Up close, she could see the puckered line of damage running from ear to jaw, the story of violence written on skin. "Yes," she said, forcing calm. "Very peaceful." "Peaceful," Scar echoed, stepping closer. "Funny word, considering you're about to come with me." From the shadows by the service door, Tommy appeared, his youthful face hard with determination. Behind her in the ballroom, she glimpsed Goldie moving toward the terrace entrance, cutting off retreat. Dom's voice in her ear was a lifeline. "We see them. Hold, Lucia." Another 30 seconds. Her mouth went dry. Scar's hand slid inside his jacket, fingers brushing a weapon. His smile widened. "You can come quietly, or you can scream. Either way, you're coming." Lucia's chest tightened. She wanted to run, to fight, to scream. But then she remembered Vito's words. "They need you alive." "That's your edge." She met Scar's eyes. "I don't think so." He chuckled darkly. "Brave, I like brave. Makes it sweeter when it breaks." But before he could draw the gun, the terrace shifted. Men in tuxedos who had looked like ordinary guests suddenly moved with military precision. Earpieces glinted. Pistols appeared from hidden holsters. The few remaining donors gasped and scattered. Scar froze, eyes darting. Tommy's hand stalled mid-draw. Goldie cursed under his breath. Then a voice cut the night air, smooth and lethal. "Vincent Moretti," Don Vito called, stepping onto the terrace like a judge entering court. "I believe you wanted a conversation." Scar's face drained of color. Around him, every path was blocked. Ada by the door, Marco by the railing, Dom near the service corridor. The trap had sprung. Lucia's knees nearly gave out, but she stood tall. The predators were caged. For the first time, she realized Vito's promise had been real. She was never alone. But as Scar's cold eyes flicked toward her, she understood something else. This wasn't the end. This was only the beginning. Scar froze in the spotlight of Don Vito's voice. For a heartbeat, his scarred face stayed hard, eyes darting between exits, weighing the impossible. Then he smiled, slow and bitter. "You're clever, Castellano," he said, raising his hands just enough to show he wasn't reaching for his gun. "But clever only buys time. Chicago won't forgive this." "Chicago doesn't have to forgive," Vito replied smoothly, stepping closer. "They only have to remember. And tonight, they will remember your failure." Marco moved in like a shadow, gun leveled at Goldie's chest. Ada pressed her blade discreetly against Tommy's ribs. Dom slipped behind Scar, pale eyes glittering. The terrace was no longer a ballroom view. It was a cage. Lucia stood near the railing, her chest tight, her hands trembling. But her eyes didn't leave Vito. He was calm, controlled, dangerous. The kind of man who could turn a gala into an execution without blinking. Scar tilted his head toward Lucia. "And her?" he said, voice sharp. "She's nothing. A waitress you dragged into this. Kill us and she'll still die. Carmine won't stop until he buries her and everyone she loves." Lucia's breath caught. He knew. Somehow he knew about Eva. Vito's gaze flicked to her, then back to Scar. "That was your mistake. Threatening what's mine." Scar's grin faltered. "Marco," Vito said. Marco shoved Goldie to his knees. Goldie cursed, but the muzzle against his neck silenced him. Ada twisted Tommy's arm until the boy whimpered. Dom held Scar steady with a grip like iron. "Lucia," Vito said suddenly. Her head jerked up. "What?" He held out his hand, palm open, steady as stone. "Come here." She hesitated, every instinct screaming to stay back. But something in his voice, calm, commanding, absolute, pulled her forward. She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm, strong, terrifying. "These men wanted you to poison me," he said, his voice low but carrying. "They wanted you to be the reason Castellano blood spilled on a restaurant floor. Tell me, Lucia, what do you think they deserve?" Her heart pounded. She looked at Scar's sneer, at Tommy's terrified eyes, at Goldie's clenched jaw. She thought of Eva's name lighting her phone, the words, "We know your sister." "I think," she whispered, voice trembling, "they deserve nothing." Vito smiled faintly. He turned to his men. "Take them!" Scar roared as Dom dragged him back inside. Goldie spat threats until Marco's fist silenced him. Tommy cried out, begging as Ada shoved him through the door. Then the terrace was empty, but for Lucia and Vito. The night air heavy with city lights and unspoken promises. Lucia pulled her hand back, shaking. "What happens to them?" Vito's gaze lingered on the city skyline. "That depends on Carmine. If he wants them back, he'll have to crawl. And when he does, I'll cut his legs out from under him." Her stomach turned. "So you'll kill them." "Or use them," Vito said calmly. "Tools, leverage, examples. Death is quick. Fear lasts longer." Lucia swallowed hard. She wanted to argue, to say this wasn't justice, it was vengeance. But she couldn't forget the texts. She couldn't forget how close Vito had come to raising that glass. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You see now, don't you? You can't go back to your old life. You saved me. That means you belong in this world, whether you want it or not." Her eyes stung. "I didn't want this." "No one ever does," Vito said softly. "But some are chosen." Before she could respond, Dom returned, his thin frame cutting through the night. "The men are secured. Carmine will hear by morning. He'll know he lost." Vito nodded. "Good. Make sure he also knows why." Dom's gaze flicked to Lucia. "And her?" She comes home with us, Vito said firmly. She's under my protection now. Lucia shivered at the word. Protection. It sounded safe, but it felt like chains. As Vito guided her back inside, applause rose from the ballroom, the oblivious guests assuming the interruption had been nothing more than theatrics for the charity gala. The orchestra played louder, the auctioneer resumed, the glittering world turned as if nothing had happened. But Lucia knew everything had changed. Back at the estate hours later, she stood in front of a mirror, dress draped across a chair, hair falling loose. The ring Vito had given her, heavy gold with the Castellano crest, rested on the vanity. She hadn't put it on yet. She wasn't ready. A soft knock at her door. Ada entered without waiting for permission. He wants to see you. Lucia's chest tightened. Now? Now! She followed Ada through silent hallways until they reached the study again. Vito was at his desk, sleeves rolled, a glass of untouched whiskey in front of him. Maps and photographs littered the surface. Carmine Torino, his men, their operations. He looked up as she entered. Lucia, her voice trembled. What happens next? He leaned back, eyes never leaving hers. Next we prepare for war. Carmine struck first. I'll strike last. And me? You'll stand beside me, he said simply. Because you're not just a waitress anymore. You're the reason I'm alive. That makes you part of this family. Lucia's throat tightened. And if I don't want to be? Vito's smile was sharp as broken glass. Then you're already dead. Morning sunlight poured through the estate's high windows. But inside Don Vito's study the mood was darker than midnight. Scar, Tommy, and Goldie had been locked in the cellar since the gala, their muffled curses echoing through stone walls. Lucia hadn't slept. Every time she closed her eyes she saw Scar's scarred grin, Goldie's teeth flashing like coins, Tommy's frightened face. And worse, she saw Eva. Alone in her apartment, unguarded, vulnerable. She gripped her phone so tightly her knuckles went white. Vito had promised Eva was safe, but no text had come. No proof, only silence. The door opened. Marco stepped in, broad shoulders filling the frame. Boss wants her. Lucia followed him to the study. Vito sat behind his desk, a spread of photographs laid out like cards in a deadly game. Carmine Torino's face stared up from the center, eyes cold even in grainy black and white. Lucia, Vito said, looking up. Sit. She sat on the edge of the leather chair, hands clenched in her lap. Did you find out anything? Vito gestured to the photos. Enough. Carmine sent Scar to test me, to weaken me, to humiliate me. Now that they've failed, Carmine has no choice but to come harder, which means we decide where and how he strikes. Dom entered quietly, thin as ever, holding a folder. Intel from our people in Chicago. Carmine made calls last night. He's furious, but he's also careful. He knows Scar's crew are in our hands. Lucia leaned forward. So what happens to them? Vito's eyes locked on hers. They'll live for now. Dead men close doors. Living men open them. We'll use them to draw Carmine in. Lucia's stomach churned. She hated the way he said for now. Dom placed the folder on the desk, opening it to reveal intercepted messages. One line stood out in bold red. The sister is leverage. Use her to smoke them out. Lucia's blood ran cold. Eva, she whispered. Vito's expression darkened. Marco? Marco nodded. She's under guard. My men checked in 2 hours ago. She's fine. Fine isn't enough, Lucia snapped, her fear exploding into anger. They know about her. They'll keep trying until Carmine is dealt with, Vito cut in. His voice was steady, but his eyes burned. And he will be. Lucia's chest heaved. She didn't ask for this. She doesn't deserve, neither did you, Vito said softly. But here you are, the words silenced her. Dom cleared his throat. Carmine will make a move within days. Probably tonight. He can't afford to look weak after the gala. He'll either try to hit Eva directly or... Dom's pale eyes slid to Lucia. Or he'll try to take her again. Use her to break you. Lucia's skin crawled. Then I should go to her. Stay with her. No. Vito's voice cracked like a whip. That's exactly what Carmine wants. He'll expect it. He'll have men waiting. You'd walk both of you into a grave. Lucia shook her head, fighting tears. So I do nothing? You trust me, Vito said, leaning forward. You trust that I will protect her. That I will protect you. That I will end Carmine before he ever lays a hand on your blood. Her throat tightened. He spoke with such certainty, such steel, that for a moment she almost believed him. Almost. The door opened again. Ada entered, dragging Scar by the collar. His face was bruised, eyes blazing with defiance. Marco shoved Goldie in behind him, wrists bound, jaw swollen. Tommy trailed last, trembling, his youthful bravado gone. Ada forced Scar into a chair opposite Vito. "They're awake!" Scar spat blood on the rug. "You think keeping us breathing makes you stronger? Carmine will burn this house to the ground to get us back." Vito poured himself a drink, swirling the amber liquid like he had all the time in the world. "He'll try, and when he does, I'll bury him in his own fire." Scar laughed bitterly. "You're finished, Castellano. Everyone knows you got soft. Taking in waitresses, protecting nobodies. You're not your father." The words hung heavy. Marco tensed. Dom's jaw twitched. Even Ada's expression flickered. Vito didn't move. He sipped his drink, set it down, and leaned forward. "You're right," he said calmly. "I'm not my father." Scar smirked. "I'm worse." The silence that followed was suffocating. Then Vito's gaze slid to Lucia. "Tell me," he said. "If you had the power, what would you do with them?" Her breath caught. "Me? Yes. You're the reason they failed. Your word kept me alive, so your word decides their fate." Scar sneered. "You don't have the stomach, girl. You're still just a waitress." Lucia's hands shook, but she forced herself to meet his eyes. "No," she said, voice trembling but steady. "I'm the reason you're still breathing." Scar blinked, caught off guard. Lucia turned to Vito. "Keep them alive. Make Carmine pay for them. Then destroy him." A slow smile spread across Vito's face. "Good instincts. You're learning." Dom nodded slightly, approval in his pale eyes. Marco smirked. Ada gave the faintest nod. Scar cursed under his breath, but for the first time, fear cracked through his defiance. Vito stood, his presence filling the room like thunder. "Take them back. Feed them, patch them up. Make sure Carmine hears they're still breathing." Ada dragged Scar out. Marco shoved Goldie. Dom herded Tommy. The door shut, leaving silence again. Vito turned back to Lucia. "You've made your choice. That makes you family." Her chest tightened. "I didn't choose." "You did," Vito interrupted gently. "Every time you open your mouth, you choose. And tonight, you chose loyalty." Lucia shook her head, but the weight of the Castellano ring on the desk mocked her. She hadn't put it on yet, but she knew deep down she already wore its invisible chains. Vito stepped close, lowering his voice. "You want your sister safe? Then stay by my side, because in this war there's only family or enemies, and enemies don't live long." Lucia swallowed hard. "And when Carmine comes?" Vito's smile was sharp as a blade. "Then we finish what he started." The night fell heavy on the Castellano estate. Guards rotated along the iron gates, headlights swept the gravel drive, and cameras blinked like watchful eyes. To anyone outside, it looked impenetrable. To Lucia, standing on the balcony of her borrowed bedroom, it felt like a gilded cage. She clutched her phone, staring at the blank screen. No messages from Eva. No proof she was really safe. Vito's promise replayed in her mind. Marco has men on her. She's fine, but promises didn't quiet the storm in her chest. A knock at her door jolted her. Ada stepped in, silent as always. "You're needed," she said simply. Lucia followed her down marble halls into the war room, Vito's study transformed. Maps of Chicago and the city sprawled across the desk, red pins marking locations, strings connecting faces. Dom hunched over a laptop, scrolling intercepted texts. Marco leaned against the wall, loading magazines with methodical precision. Vito stood at the head of the table, sleeves rolled, voice calm. Carmine's patience has run out. "He's making his move." Dom looked up, pale eyes sharp. "Intercepted chatter confirms it. A team was sent tonight. Not for you, Vito, for her." He nodded at Lucia. Her stomach dropped. "Eva?" Dom clicked a file open. Security camera stills filled the screen, grainy images of men in black hoodies near a modest apartment building. Her apartment building? Eva's building. Lucia's breath hitched. No, she was supposed to be safe." "She is," Marco said flatly. "My men intercepted them before they reached the door. 3 shooters, 2 fled, 1 dead." Lucia covered her mouth. Dead. Someone had died on her sister's street because of her. "Eva's alive," Vito said firmly. That's what matters. Tears stung her eyes. For how long? They'll keep coming. That's why we stop them, Vito cut in, his tone steel. He pointed to the map. Carmine sent men across state lines. That's a declaration. He's forcing my hand. Dom adjusted his glasses. He'll expect retaliation. He'll prepare. Good, Vito said. Let him. This ends before the week is out. Lucia's voice cracked. You talk like it's simple. But it's not just you and Carmine, it's me. It's Eva. I didn't choose this war. Vito's gaze locked on hers, burning. Neither did I, but here we are. She shook her head, trembling. Why me? Why does it have to be me? Because you heard, Vito said softly. Because you saw, and because you whispered. The room went still. Ada's eyes flicked between them. Dom looked back to his laptop. Marco slid another bullet into a magazine with a quiet click. Lucia's chest tightened. She wanted to scream, to walk away, to grab Eva and disappear. But she knew the truth. Scar had been right. Running would only put a target on her back bigger than before. Her phone buzzed suddenly. An unknown number again. Lucia's hands shook as she read the message aloud. She's next. Unless you walk away from Castellano tonight. Her vision blurred. It's Eva. They'll kill her if... Vito snatched the phone, scanning the text with cold precision. He handed it to Dom. Trace it. Dom's fingers flew. Burner, pinging off 3 towers. But it's coming from inside the city. Vito's jaw tightened. He's closer than I thought. Lucia grabbed his arm, desperation flooding her voice. Please, you can't gamble with her life. Vito turned to her, his expression unreadable. I don't gamble. I calculate. And I don't lose. Easy to say when it's not your sister. His eyes darkened. Every man I've buried in this war was someone's brother, someone's son. Don't tell me I don't understand. Lucia froze, struck silent by the raw edge in his voice. Ida broke the silence. What's the play? Vito exhaled slowly, then straightened. We bring Eva here. Lucia's heart lurched. Here? No. She doesn't belong in this world. She already does, Vito said firmly. Carmine has her name. He knows her face. She's safer inside my walls than in any apartment. Marco, send a team. Quietly. Get her out before Carmine tries again. Marco nodded, already dialing. Lucia's chest tightened. She'll hate me. She doesn't even know. Tell her nothing, Vito cut in. Let her think this is about me owing you a favor. She'll adjust. Tears stung Lucia's eyes. You think everything bends to your will. But Eva isn't like me. She won't survive in this world. Vito's gaze softened. Just barely. Then we'll keep her away from it as much as possible. But alive. Dom looked up from his laptop. Trace complete. That burner phone? It wasn't just Carmine's men sending threats. Vito's brow furrowed. Who else? Dom turned the laptop toward him. Grainy surveillance footage filled the screen. A figure leaning against a car, face half hidden, phone in hand. Not Carmine, not Scar, someone younger, sharper. That, Dom said, is Carmine's nephew, Lorenzo Torino. He's the one sending the messages. Lucia's breath caught. The image was clear enough. A man in his late 20s, handsome, cruel eyes fixed on the phone screen. Dom tapped the photo. And rumor is Carmine's grooming him to take over. If Lorenzo has your sister marked, this isn't just leverage, it's personal. Vito's expression hardened. Then Lorenzo becomes the message. We catch him, we break him, and we send him back to Chicago in pieces Carmine can't ignore. The room went silent. Lucia's voice trembled. You're planning to kill him. Vito's eyes met hers. I'm planning to end this war before it ends you. Lucia shivered. She knew there was no turning back now. Not for her, not for Eva. And somewhere in the city, Lorenzo Torino smiled at his phone, already planning his next move. The Castellano estate gates swung open at midnight. And for the first time since this nightmare began, Lucia saw her sister again. Eva stumbled out of the black SUV, flanked by Marco's men. She looked small and furious in her oversized hoodie, her hair pulled into a messy bun. Her eyes, wide, dark, and identical to Lucia's, darted over the mansion, the guards, the cameras, the overwhelming display of power. Luce, she said, her voice tight. What is this? Lucia ran forward, pulling her into a desperate hug. Relief flooded through her. Warm, dizzying, so sharp it almost hurt. Ava stiffened for a moment, then hugged her back, confusion written all over her face. "You're safe," Lucia whispered. "That's all that matters." "Safe?" Eva pulled back, glaring. "I was dragged out of my apartment by guys with guns. One of them carried me down the stairs like I was a bag of groceries. You call that safe?" Lucia's throat closed. She glanced at Vito, who had come out onto the steps, his presence cutting through the night like a blade. Ava's glare shifted to him instantly. "And who the hell is this?" she demanded. "Don Vito Castellano," he said smoothly, as if introducing himself at a dinner party instead of a midnight extraction. "A friend of your sister's. You're welcome in my home." Eva snorted. "Friend?" "Right. Guys like you don't have friends, they have property." Lucia's heart sank. "Eva, please, no!" Ava shook her head, her voice cracking. "You vanished. No texts, no calls, nothing. And now I'm in some Mafia palace being told I'm safe? What did you drag us into, Luce?" Lucia's chest ached. She wanted to tell her everything. That the wine was poisoned. That Scar whispered death over dinner. That texts promising blood had crawled into her phone like spiders. But how could she? How could she admit that 4 whispered words, "Don't drink that glass," had changed their lives forever? "She saved me," Vito said suddenly, his voice calm but heavy with truth. Eva turned on him. "Saved you? She's a waitress. She makes tips, not miracles." "She saved my life," Vito repeated, his gaze steady. "Which makes her family now. And family is protected." Eva's face twisted. "Protected? This is prison." Lucia grabbed her hands. "Eva, please. They know your name. They were at your building tonight. You weren't safe there. You're only safe here." Eva's eyes filled with tears, anger and fear clashing in her chest. She yanked her hands free. "No, you made a choice for both of us. And now we're trapped in his world." Silence fell. Guards shifted uncomfortably. Marco looked away. Ada's hand brushed the knife at her hip. Vito didn't move. "You're angry," he said, his voice low, even. "That means you're still alive to feel it. Be grateful." Eva glared at him. "I don't owe you anything." Vito smiled faintly, dangerous in its softness. "Not yet." Lucia squeezed her eyes shut. "Please, both of you, just... Not tonight," Eva huffed, turning away. "Fine. Show me where I'm supposed to sleep in my new prison." Ada gestured for her to follow. The youngest Torino target had just arrived under Vito's roof, and the air inside the mansion felt ready to snap. Later that night, Lucia couldn't sleep. She sat on the edge of her bed, listening to the hum of security cameras outside, the distant footsteps of guards. She replayed Eva's words over and over. "You dragged us into this." Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Her stomach dropped as she opened it. "Did you like the reunion?" She froze. Another buzz. "Your sister looks just like you." "Easier than I thought." Lucia's blood turned to ice. "No?" A third buzz. Turned to the window. Heart hammering, she moved to the curtains and pulled them back. Across the estate lawn, just beyond the outer lights, a shadow stood, a tall figure still watching. The phone buzzed one last time. "Smile for me, Lucia. Because next time I won't be so polite." She staggered back, her hand clamping over her mouth to keep from screaming. "Lucia!" She jumped. Vito stood in her doorway, silent as a ghost, his eyes narrowing as he saw her face. "What is it?" Wordlessly, she held out the phone. He read the messages, jaw tightening. His gaze snapped to the window. By the time Marco arrived, the shadow was gone. "Lorenzo Torino," Vito muttered, his tone like ice. "Bold enough to stand on my lawn." "Who is he?" Lucia whispered, shaking. "Carmine's nephew," Vito said. "The one who thinks he's untouchable." His eyes darkened. "He just made his first mistake." Lucia's voice cracked. He was watching Eva. Vito stepped closer, his hand firm on her shoulder. "Then he's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet." At dawn, the estate was locked down tighter than a fortress. Guards doubled. Cameras re-angled. Dom paced like a vulture. Ada sharpened her knives. Marco inspected rifles. Lucia sat with Eva in the sunroom. Her sister hadn't said a word since the night before, staring out the window at the sprawling lawn as if planning an escape. "Ava, please," Lucia whispered. "I know it feels wrong, but they'll kill you if you leave." Eva turned, eyes red, jaw trembling. And what if staying kills us faster? Before Lucia could answer, the estate shook. Not metaphorically. Literally. A thunderous boom rattled the glass, shaking chandeliers, sending guards shouting into radios. Lucia grabbed Eva as the second explosion ripped across the lawn, fireball lighting the early morning sky. The estate's outer gate had just been blown apart. Sirens wailed. Marco stormed in, weapon drawn. "Boss, they're here!" Carmine's men, he brought them to the gates. Lucia's heart stopped. War wasn't coming. It had already arrived. The ground still shook as smoke billowed past the broken gates. Guards rushed into position, radios crackling with shouts. "South perimeter breached!" Multiple hostiles, heavy weapons. Lucia clutched Eva's hand, dragging her behind a marble column in the sunroom. Her sister was sobbing, terrified, eyes locked on the fiery glow spilling into the estate grounds. "Luce, what's happening?" Eva cried. Before she could answer, Marco stormed in, rifle raised, his voice steady despite the chaos. "Boss says lock the sisters down. We'll hold the front." "No," Eva screamed, yanking her arm. "I'm not hiding in some cage while people shoot outside." "Eva," Marco snapped. "This isn't a debate. You move or you die." Lucia tightened her grip. "Please, just listen." But Eva's eyes blazed. "Listen? To him? To you? This is insane." Another explosion rattled the walls, shattering a chandelier in the hall. Eva shrieked as glass rained down, but Marco grabbed them both, muscling them toward the reinforced door at the back of the sunroom. Behind them, Ada appeared, knives strapped to her arms, face grim. "East wall's compromised. They're inside the grounds." "Numbers?" Marco barked. "Dozen, maybe more. Carmine's not holding back." Lucia's blood went cold. "They're here? Inside the estate?" Ada shoved the panic door open, revealing a narrow staircase descending underground. "Move," Eva resisted. "I'm not going into some hole in the ground." Ada leaned in, her voice a hiss. "You want to watch your sister die? Because that's the only other option." Lucia pulled Eva into the stairwell before she could argue again. The heavy steel door slammed shut behind them, muffling the gunfire but not erasing it. The stairwell was dim, the air thick with dust and the hum of generators. Eva stumbled after her, still muttering curses. Lucia's heart pounded with each step, every boom above them shaking dust loose from the ceiling. When they reached the bottom, a thick vault-like door loomed ahead. Marco spun the wheel lock, shoving it open to reveal a bunker lit by fluorescent strips. Dom was already there, papers spread across a table, a handgun in reach. His pale eyes flicked to the sisters. "Good, at least they're alive." "Where's Vito?" Lucia demanded, breathless. "Where he always is when the wolves come to the door," Dom said evenly. "At the front, holding the line." The words hit like a fist. Above, the muffled roar of automatic fire rattled the bunker walls. Lucia pressed her palms over her ears, Eva burying her face against her shoulder. "Stay here," Marco ordered. "Do not open the door for anyone unless it's me or Ada. Understood?" Lucia nodded, though her chest screamed to run after Vito. Eva grabbed her hand like a lifeline. Marco disappeared back into the stairwell. Ada followed with a last glance, her expression unreadable. The door clanged shut, leaving them sealed in the bunker with Dom. Eva was pacing like a caged animal. "This is insane. They're bombing us. You're just going to sit here and wait to die?" Dom's voice was sharp. "Your sister already saved his life once. That's the only reason you're breathing. Don't waste it." Eva spun on him. "Saved his life? What is she, his pet now?" Lucia's chest burned. "Eva, please." "No, Luce." Eva snapped. "You keep defending him, but all I see is a man who dragged us into hell." Lucia's lips trembled. "I dragged us into hell. I heard them planning to poison him. I whispered to stop him. That was me. Not him." Eva's face crumpled. "Then you ruined us." The words stabbed deeper than any bullet. Before Lucia could answer, the floor above boomed like thunder. Dust rained down. Dom grabbed his radio, his voice sharp. "Status, static." Then Marco's voice strained. "They've breached the East Hall. Heavy fire. Boss is pushing them back, but—" The radio cut with a screech. Lucia's blood went cold. "Marco?" No answer. Dom cursed under his breath, turning to the sisters. "Stay down here. If Castellano falls, you'll be their prize." Lucia's chest heaved. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't sit still while Vito fought upstairs. The man who had pulled her into this world, chained her to it, terrified her. He was also the reason Eva was still alive. She stood suddenly, heart hammering. "I'm going up." Dom's eyes narrowed. "No." "Yes," she said, voice shaking but firm. "If they're here for me, hiding won't stop it. They'll tear this place apart." Eva grabbed her arm. "Luce, don't—" Lucia turned to her, tears brimming. "If I don't, we both die anyway." The radio crackled faintly. Vito's voice, calm even through static. "Dom, hold the bunker. I'm buying time." Lucia froze. His tone wasn't victory. It was finality. "No," she whispered. "He's not going to make it." Dom's jaw tightened. "He will." Another explosion shook the bunker, lights flickering. Eva screamed. And then silence. Too heavy, too wrong. The radio crackled again, but this time it wasn't Vito. A mocking voice slithered through the static. "Carlo sends his regards. The king's about to fall. Hand over the sisters, and maybe we'll let you crawl out alive." Dom's face drained of color. "Lorenzo." Lucia's knees buckled. He was inside the estate. Eva clutched her tighter, whispering in terror. "Luce." "He's coming for us." The bunker lights flickered once, then twice, as the sound of heavy boots thundered above. Dust sifted from the ceiling, sprinkling the table where Dom had spread his maps. Eva clung to Lucia's arm, nails digging into her skin. The radio crackled again. Lorenzo's voice, smooth, cruel, too close. "Castellano's finished. His men are bleeding on the lawn. Open the door, sweetheart. Save yourself and your sister. Otherwise we'll come in and take you." Lucia's blood ran cold. He was talking directly to her. Dom's pale eyes snapped to the steel vault door. He moved like a blade, quick and efficient, stacking files, sliding a pistol across the table toward her. Lucia stared. "I don't know how to—" "You'll learn fast," Dom said. "Point and pull. That's all that matters," Eva gasped. "You're giving her a gun? She's never—" The bunker walls shook violently, cutting her off. Metal groaned. The reinforced door bulged inward with the force of explosives. "Breaching charges," Dom muttered. He racked his own pistol, calm as death. "When it blows, stay low. Aim for legs, not heads. You're not soldiers, but you can slow them." Lucia's hands shook as she gripped the weapon. The weight felt unreal, alien. Her reflection in the polished steel table showed a woman she barely recognized. Hair wild, dress torn, fear written across her face. But beside her was Eva, trembling, wide-eyed, whispering, "I don't want to die here." Lucia's chest hardened. She couldn't let that happen. The explosion came like a thunderclap. The vault door tore off its hinges, crashing inward in a shower of sparks and smoke. Figures stormed through. Men in black tactical gear, rifles raised. Dom fired first, 2 sharp cracks. One man dropped. Another stumbled. Marco's voice roared faintly from upstairs. He was still fighting. But here, in the bunker, the battle had reached them. "Down!" Lucia screamed, yanking Eva to the floor as bullets shredded the table. Sparks flew. The maps burned at the edges. She raised the pistol with shaking hands and fired. The recoil jolted her shoulder, nearly tearing the gun from her grip. But one of the attackers fell, clutching his thigh. Another advanced. Ada appeared behind him like a phantom, her blade flashing across his throat. He collapsed silently, crimson spreading across the concrete. More poured in, 6, maybe 7. Gunfire deafened. Eva sobbed, pressed flat against the floor. Lucia fired again and again, missing once, grazing another. Her ears rang, hands numb, but she didn't stop. Through the smoke, a tall figure stepped into the bunker. No mask, no gear. Just a tailored black coat, a pistol in one hand. His smile sharp as broken glass. Lorenzo Torino. He looked young, barely older than Eva, handsome in a cruel way. His eyes locked instantly on Lucia, glinting with amusement. "There she is," he said, his voice cutting through the chaos like silk. The waitress who thought she could play in men's games. Dom aimed, but Lorenzo's shot was faster. The bullet smashed into the table inches from Dom's hand, forcing him back. "This isn't your fight, old man," Lorenzo said smoothly. His pistol never wavered. "It's hers," Lucia's chest heaved. "Leave my sister out of this." Lorenzo chuckled. "Your sister?" "Sweet girl," Looks just like you. I could almost mistake her for you if the lights were dim. Ava whimpered. Shut up! Lorenzo snapped, his tone sharp enough to slice. His eyes flicked back to Lucia. Here's the offer. Walk out with me and Eva lives. Stay here and she dies screaming. Lucia's stomach twisted. She raised the pistol, her hands trembling. If you touch her... Lorenzo tilted his head, amused. Look at you, pretending you can pull that trigger again. Tell me, Lucia, did it feel good? That first one you shot? The way he fell? Her hands shook harder. Shut up! Or maybe it scared you, Lorenzo taunted, stepping closer. That's better. Fear makes you mine, just like it made your precious Don Vito's men mine. They're dying upstairs right now. The words stabbed deep. But before she could respond, a new sound filled the bunker. A single gunshot, loud, final. Lorenzo staggered, his pistol slipping from his hand. His coat darkened at the shoulder where blood blossomed. Behind him, framed in the smoke and broken steel, Don Vito Castellano stepped into the bunker. His suit was torn, his face streaked with soot, but his eyes were fire. He held his pistol steady, smoke curling from the barrel. Nobody touches what's mine, Vito said, his voice low and lethal. The room froze. The attackers glanced at each other, faltering. Vito moved like death itself. 2 shots, 2 men down. Another lunged with a knife, only to collapse as Ada buried her blade in his ribs. Marco stormed in behind Vito, bloodied but alive, mowing down the rest with ruthless precision. Within seconds, the bunker was silent again. Smoke drifted. Bodies sprawled across the floor. Only Lorenzo remained alive, clutching his bleeding shoulder, glaring up at Vito with venom. You can't stop it, Lorenzo spat. Carmine will bury you. He'll bury her. His gaze flicked to Lucia. Vito's gun pressed to Lorenzo's forehead. The room held its breath. But instead of pulling the trigger, Vito lowered the weapon. His smile was cold. Alive, you're more useful. He nodded to Marco. Bind him. He'll bring Carmine to us. Marco hauled Lorenzo up, chains biting into his wrists. Lucia dropped the pistol, her arms trembling violently. Ava crawled into her arms, sobbing, clinging like a child. Vito's eyes found hers across the bunker. And in that moment, through smoke and blood, she understood. She wasn't just part of this war anymore. She was the reason it would end. The bunker reeked of cordite and blood. Smoke still hung in the air, stinging eyes and lungs. Guards dragged bodies out one by one, the scrape of boots and groans of the wounded echoing down the narrow stairwell. Lucia sat on the floor, Eva curled against her chest, both of them shaking in silence. The pistol she'd dropped lay a few feet away, black metal against the concrete like a reminder of what she'd done, what she'd become. Vito stood in the center of the room, soot-stained and bloodied, but his presence was unshakable. He watched as Marco chained Lorenzo tighter, iron cuffs digging into flesh. Lorenzo's smirk never left, even with blood soaking his sleeve. You think keeping me alive wins you anything? Lorenzo taunted. Carmine will scorch the earth to get me back. He'll tear this city apart. Vito's gaze was cold steel. Good, let him come. For once, he'll walk into my fire instead of the other way around. Dom slid a chair into the room, setting it in front of the table. He gestured for Lorenzo to sit. Marco forced him down, Ada standing behind like a shadow with her blade poised. Eva flinched at the sight. Loose, she whispered, her voice cracking. We shouldn't be here. This isn't our world. Lucia stroked her hair, trying to soothe her, but her own voice was unsteady. It doesn't matter anymore. We're in it. Vito turned, his eyes locking on them. For the first time since the siege began, his expression softened, just barely. You're alive. That's all that matters. Lucia looked up, her heart hammering. For how long? They'll come again. They won't stop until Carmine is finished, Vito said, cutting her off, his tone absolute. Lorenzo chuckled darkly. You're dreaming, Castellano. You think this little fortress makes you untouchable? Carmine has allies. Politicians, cops, judges. You won't know where the bullet's coming from until it's in your skull. Vito's smile was thin. Then I'll make sure he never pulls the trigger. He leaned closer, his voice low, dangerous. Tell me where he's hiding. Tell me where he keeps his war chest. Do that, and maybe you'll see Chicago again. Lorenzo spat blood onto the floor. Go to hell. Ada's knife kissed the side of his neck. You'll get there first. she said flatly. But Vito raised a hand, stopping her. No, he stays breathing for now. Dom adjusted his glasses. Boss, if we hold Lorenzo, Carmine won't retreat. He'll escalate. This war ends one of two ways. We bury them, or they bury us. Vito nodded once. Then we bury them. The words rang through the bunker, final as a death sentence. Hours later, after the last flames outside were extinguished and the dead cleared from the estate grounds, Lucia stood alone in the courtyard. The night was eerily still now, broken gates replaced with armed guards and temporary barricades. Ava refused to leave her side, clutching her arm as if letting go meant being swallowed whole. We have to run, Luce, she whispered. Now, before it's too late. Lucia shook her head, her throat tight. There's nowhere to run, don't you get it? They'll find us anywhere. Then we disappear, change our names, leave the country. Lucia almost laughed at the absurdity. With what money? With what papers? And with Carmine hunting us like animals? Eva's tears shimmered in the moonlight. I don't care about money. I just want you back. I want us back. Lucia pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. I want that too, she whispered. But that life is gone. Behind them, a door opened. Vito stepped into the courtyard, his jacket replaced, his presence still commanding despite the exhaustion lining his face. Lucia, he called softly. She turned, Eva tightening her grip. Vito's gaze swept over them, then settled on Lucia. We move tomorrow. Carmine will regroup, and so will we. The longer Lorenzo breathes, the more desperate Carmine becomes. Eva glared at him. And what about us? What about her? Vito's eyes flicked to her, then back to Lucia. You stay here, guarded safe. Safe? Eva spat. There's no safe in your world. Just cages and guns. Vito's voice hardened. Alive is safer than dead, and your sister understands that. Lucia's chest clenched. She did understand, but Eva's hatred carved into her like knives. After a long silence, Vito stepped closer, his voice low enough only Lucia heard. You've seen what Carmine's willing to do? Threats won't stop until he's gone. You want your sister free? Then stand with me until this is over. Lucia's heart pounded. She wanted to say no, to scream, to beg, but instead she found herself whispering, and then? Vito's dark eyes held hers. Then you'll never have to look over your shoulder again. Later, in the cellar, Lorenzo laughed despite his wounds, the sound echoing off stone. You think keeping me in chains makes you stronger, but you've made a mistake, Castellano. Carmine doesn't care if I live or die. He cares about winning, and he'll bury you under bodies to prove it. Vito leaned close, his voice a whisper sharp as a knife. Then let him try. Because you're the reason I'll know where to strike. For the first time, Lorenzo's smile faltered. Vito turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing, leaving his prisoner in the dark. In her room, Lucia couldn't sleep. She stared at the Castellano crest ring on the bedside table, its gold glinting in the moonlight. She thought of the girl she'd been 2 weeks ago, pouring wine, wiping tables, dreaming of nothing bigger than making rent. That girl was gone. In her place was a woman tied to a man who waged war with cities, a woman whose sister's life now depended on whispers, guns, and choices she never wanted to make. She slipped the ring onto her finger, the weight sinking into her bones. Outside, thunder rumbled, not from the sky, but from the war drums of Carmine Torino, already marching closer. And in the silence of her room, Lucia whispered to herself the truth she could no longer deny. There's no escape. Only survival. The morning after the siege, the Castellano estate looked like a scar. Charred earth blackened the gates, broken glass glittered in the grass, and guards patrolled with harder eyes than before. But inside, war rooms never slept. Lucia stood at the edge of the study, Ava curled into a chair beside her, refusing to look at anyone. On the desk lay a single folder, delivered by a courier who hadn't lived long enough to explain it. Vito flipped it open. Inside was a letter, typed, unsigned, but stamped with a seal everyone in the room recognized. Carmine Torino. Vito read aloud, voice calm, almost amused. Return my nephew by midnight tomorrow. Fail, and I'll turn this city into a graveyard. You're outnumbered. You're outgunned. Don't test me. He folded the letter neatly, set it aside, and poured himself a drink. He's nervous. Dom arched an eyebrow. That's not nerves. That's a line in the sand. Lines are meant to be crossed, Vito said. Lucia's voice cracked. You're going to fight him, even if it burns the city down? Vito's dark eyes met hers. I don't burn cities. I own them. Carmine's mistake is thinking we play the same game. Ava scoffed, breaking her silence. You're all insane. He's threatening to kill hundreds of people, and you sit here talking about owning cities. Ada leaned against the wall, arms folded, knives glinting. Your uncle made the threat, not us. He's not my uncle. Eva snapped. He's not our anything. We're not part of this. But her words fell flat. Even she knew they were already too deep. Dom slid a map across the desk. Chicago strongholds. Carmine's men run most of the west side, but his real base is the warehouse district. Cash, weapons, safe houses. Burn that and you burn him. Vito sipped his drink, studying the map with cold eyes. Perfect. Lucia's stomach twisted. Perfect? People live there, families, you can't just... He cut her off. I don't kill civilians, Lucia, but I will cut the legs out from under anyone who points a gun at me, or at you. Her breath caught. At me? You're the reason Carmine's desperate, Vito said softly. You embarrassed him. You gave me leverage. Now he'll throw everything at breaking you. That's why you stay close to me. Eva's voice was sharp. So you're just going to use her? Like bait? Vito didn't blink. Like family. Eva stood, trembling with rage. You keep saying that word. Family. But all I see are cages and chains. If you really cared about her, you'd let her go. Lucia's heart clenched. She wanted to say yes, to beg Vito to release her. But when her eyes met his, something else rose. Fear. Yes, but also a dangerous pull she couldn't deny. She's safer here, Vito said. His voice was calm, final, leaving no room for argument. Ava's tears spilled. She stormed from the room, slamming the door so hard the walls rattled. Silence hung. Vito looked at Lucia, his tone softer. She'll understand. In time. Lucia shook her head. No. She'll hate me forever. Better she hates you alive than loves you dead. The words cut deep, because she knew they were true. That evening, the estate's cellar echoed with Lorenzo's laughter. Lucia had followed Ada down, unable to stay away. She wanted to see the man who had stood outside her window, who had smiled at her like a wolf sizing prey. He sat chained to a chair, bruised but grinning. When his eyes met hers, his smile widened. There she is, he said smoothly. The waitress who thinks she's a queen now. Ada shoved him back down when he leaned forward. Watch your mouth. But Lorenzo's gaze never left Lucia. You know he's lying to you, right? Castellano. He doesn't save people. He owns them. That ring he gave you? His eyes flicked to her hand. That's a shackle. Gold-plated, but a shackle all the same. Lucia swallowed hard. You don't know anything about me. I know enough, Lorenzo said, his voice dripping venom. I know you didn't grow up in this world. I know you want out, and I know he'll never let you leave. His words crawled into her chest like thorns. She wanted to deny them, but deep down she feared he was right. Ada's knife pressed to his throat. One more word and you'll choke on it. Lorenzo chuckled. Go ahead, kill me. Carmine will slaughter you all before the blood dries. Ada's jaw tightened, but she didn't strike. Lucia turned and fled, her pulse hammering. She hated Lorenzo, but his words echoed in her skull long after she left the cellar. That night, Vito found her in the garden, sitting alone under the broken moonlight. You shouldn't wonder, he said softly. Not tonight. I can't breathe in there, she whispered. Your guards, your guns, your walls, it feels like a coffin. He crouched in front of her, his face shadowed. It's not a coffin. It's armor. You think I like walls? Gates? Guards watching my every step? No, but without them I'd be dead. And so would you. Her throat tightened. Ava hates me. She hates you. She'll never forgive this. Vito's eyes darkened. She'll forgive one day, when she sees you alive. Lucia looked at him, tears brimming. And if she doesn't? His hand brushed hers, warm and steady. Then you'll still have me. Her heart stuttered. She should have pulled away, but she didn't. For the first time, she let herself wonder if she wanted to. At midnight, Dom stormed into the study, phone in hand. Boss, Carmine just made his move. Everyone turned. Dom's voice was grim. He's calling in politicians, judges, even federal agents. He's painting this as a kidnapping. He wants Lorenzo back through the courts. If that fails, he'll send an army. Either way, the clock is ticking. Vito's jaw clenched. Then we don't wait. We strike first. Lucia's blood ran cold. Strike where? Dom laid down fresh intel. Photos of warehouses, bank accounts, blueprints. Chicago, he said. We burn his empire to ash. Lucia's breath caught. Chicago. The city Carmine ruled like a king. The city that would now become a battlefield. And she, a waitress who once whispered "don't drink," was standing at the heart of a war about to swallow them all. The black sedan cut through the night like a knife, headlights slicing the fog that clung to the outskirts of the city. Inside, silence reigned except for the low hum of the engine. Lucia sat in the back seat beside Vito, Eva pressed against her other side like a shadow unwilling to let go. Marco drove, eyes fixed on the road, while Ada sat in the passenger seat, blade strapped openly to her thigh. Dom had chosen to stay behind, coordinating through encrypted channels. Chicago loomed ahead, a skyline of steel and fire. Vito broke the silence first. His voice was calm, too calm. By tomorrow morning, Carmine Torino will have nothing left. Eva scoffed bitterly. And how many people will you destroy to make that true? Vito didn't look at her. As many as it takes. Lucia reached for Eva's hand, but her sister pulled away. The distance between them hurt worse than any gunfire. Vito noticed. He always noticed. His gaze shifted to Lucia. You'll stay close to me tonight. No wandering, no mistakes. Carmine's men will be desperate. Desperate men make rash choices. Lucia's throat tightened. And if I can't do what you ask? Vito leaned closer, his dark eyes holding hers. You already did the night you whispered those words. You saved my life. You think I'll ever doubt you again? Her heart stuttered. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that her courage wasn't an accident. But fear still gnawed at her ribs. Eva muttered under her breath. He doesn't trust you. He's just using you. Vito's lips curled faintly. If I didn't trust her, we wouldn't be driving into enemy territory with her at my side. Eva said nothing more, but her silence was a storm. The convoy pulled into an abandoned rail yard on the edge of the warehouse district. Dozens of Vito's men waited, dressed in plain dark suits, rifles hidden beneath overcoats. Their faces were grim, eyes sharp. Marco parked near a rusted freight car and stepped out first, scanning the shadows. Ada followed, blades catching moonlight. Vito opened the door for Lucia and Eva, his hand steady as he guided them out. Stay behind me, he said simply. The rail yard was alive with whispers, the low crackle of radios, the distant groan of steel. In the center, under the weak glow of a hanging light bulb, sat a single reinforced chair. Chains rattled against it. Lorenzo. He was already there, dragged out from the cellar and strapped in like a prize on display. His face was bruised, his lips split, but his smirk hadn't faded. When his eyes landed on Lucia, his grin widened. My golden waitress. Come to watch me die? Lucia flinched, but Vito's hand brushed her back, grounding her. Not tonight, Vito said coldly. You're going to bring your uncle to me. Lorenzo laughed, a hollow sound. You think Carmine will walk into your little trap? He'll level this place before he steps foot here. Vito's smile was sharper than a blade. That's the plan. The rail yard transformed into a fortress over the next 2 hours. Men hauled crates into firing positions, snipers climbed skeletal towers, and vehicles formed barricades at the entrances. Dom's voice crackled through radios, directing movements from afar. Lucia and Eva sat on a crate near Vito's command table. Maps were spread wide, pins marking warehouses, escape routes, and expected Torino reinforcements. Eva whispered fiercely, We have to run, Luce. Look around. This isn't survival. This is suicide. Lucia shook her head. If we run, they'll find us. You saw what they did at the estate. I'd rather die free than live like this. Eva snapped too loud. Heads turned. Vito didn't. He continued studying the map as if her words were nothing more than passing wind. But Marco's eyes narrowed, and Ada shifted uneasily. Ava's defiance was dangerous here. Dangerous to herself. Dangerous to them all. Lucia grabbed her hand, squeezing. Please, not now. Eva yanked free, tears burning in her eyes. Near midnight, the sound of engines filled the night. Headlights appeared on the far side of the rail yard. Dozens of vehicles. Black SUVs, armored trucks. Carmine Torino's army. The men shifted, rifles clicking into readiness. The tension was a living thing, sharp as glass in the air. Vito stepped forward into the open yard, unflinching, his coat sweeping like a banner. Lucia's breath caught. He looked every inch the king of this war, unyielding, unafraid. The convoy stopped. Doors opened. Carmine Torino emerged. He was nothing like Lorenzo. Older, broader, dressed in a flawless three-piece suit that gleamed under the weak lights. His presence filled the yard, radiating command. Beside him marched his lieutenants, dozens of men with rifles in hand. When his gaze found Vito, the corner of his mouth lifted. So, the boy king of New York comes to Chicago. And he brings... what? His eyes flicked to Lucia, sharp and cruel. A waitress? Laughter rippled through his men. Lucia's chest burned with shame and fury, but she didn't look away. Vito's voice cut like steel. She's the reason you failed, and she'll be the reason you lose again tonight. Carmine's eyes narrowed. You're playing with fire, Castellano. Fire's the only language your family understands, Vito replied. The air crackled. A single spark could ignite it into war. Lorenzo laughed from his chair, chained but grinning. And here it is. The end of kings. Dom's voice crackled in Lucia's hidden earpiece. Stay steady. Wait for my signal. Her heart thundered. Eva clutched her arm so tightly it hurt. Carmine raised a hand. His men aimed rifles. Vito's fingers brushed the trigger of his pistol, his body perfectly still, and then the world held its breath. The rail yard was silent except for the hum of Carmine's engines and the cold night wind rattling through rusted steel beams. Hundreds of eyes fixed on the two men standing in the center of the open yard. Don Vito Castellano and Carmine Torino. Lucia's pulse thundered in her ears. She clung to Eva's hand, though her sister was trembling so hard she could barely stand. Every instinct screamed to run, but there was nowhere to go. Carmine stepped forward, his shoes crunching gravel, his suit gleaming even in the half-light. He looked at Vito as if measuring a coffin. You've made a mistake bringing this fight here, Carmine said, voice booming like a judge passing sentence. Chicago is mine. Every dock, every warehouse, every street corner. And you... His gaze flicked to Lucia, sharp as a blade. Brought a waitress to a war. Vito didn't flinch. You should know by now, Carmine. Sometimes it's the smallest moves that tip the board. He tilted his head slightly. In the shadows, Castellano snipers shifted. Lucia could feel it, an invisible net already strung around the Torinos. Carmine smiled coldly. And sometimes pawns get sacrificed. He snapped his fingers. In an instant, chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded like thunder, tearing through the rail yard. Sparks flew off metal crates. Men shouted, fell, scrambled. The war had begun. Lucia dropped with Eva behind a stack of freight, her heart in her throat. Bullets punched holes into the steel inches above her head. Stay down! Marco roared, firing from the opposite flank. His voice was steady, but blood already darkened his sleeve. Vito moved through the chaos like he was born in it, firing with deadly precision. Two of Carmine's men fell before they even raised their rifles. Ada was a ghost in the dark, knives flashing, cutting throats before screams could rise. Lucia pulled Eva close, trying to shield her. She shouldn't be here. None of them should. But then she remembered Lorenzo's words. A waitress who thinks she's a queen now. Maybe she wasn't a queen, but she wasn't powerless either. Through the haze she saw him, Lorenzo, still chained to his chair, laughing like a madman as bullets flew around him. And then, impossibly, one of Carmine's men reached him, with a hidden key. The chains fell. Lorenzo rose, stretching his arms, his grin feral. Miss me, uncle? Carmine's eyes flared with recognition, then fury. You betrayed me? But Lorenzo was already moving, scooping up a rifle from a fallen guard. He aimed, not at Vito, not at Carmine, but at Lucia. Her blood froze. Vito shouted her name and fired, but Lorenzo ducked behind the wreckage. Bullets tore through the crate shielding her, wood splintering inches from her face. Eva screamed, "Run!" Lucia pushed her sister toward a gap in the barricades. Find cover. Eva shook her head violently, clinging. Not without you. Lucia's hands trembled, but she shoved her away with every ounce of strength. Go. Eva stumbled into the dark, disappearing between freight cars. Relief and terror crashed through Lucia at once. But then Lorenzo was there, close, too close. his rifle aimed straight at her chest. "Well, Bella," he hissed, sweat and blood streaking his face. "Looks like you get to die in the story you wrote." Her hands shook as she raised her pistol. His laughter was cruel, echoing over the chaos. "You won't shoot me. You're still just a waitress." Her finger hovered on the trigger. Her whole body screamed in terror. And then she remembered. The first night. The whisper. "Don't drink." The glass frozen in Vito's hand. She had moved without thinking then, and she could move without thinking now. Lucia squeezed the trigger. The pistol cracked. Lorenzo staggered, his rifle falling from his hands. Blood bloomed across his chest, shock flashing across his face. His lips moved, trying to speak, but no sound came. He collapsed into the dirt. Lucia's chest heaved, her hands shaking violently. She had done it. She had killed him. "Lucia!" Vito's voice roared through the chaos. He was at her side in seconds, his arm hauling her up, shielding her with his own body as gunfire still cracked across the yard. "It's over," she gasped, her voice breaking. Not yet. His eyes were fire. Not until Carmine falls. Across the yard, Carmine fought like a man possessed, his guards falling one by one. But Castellano's trap was closing, Marco's men driving them back, Ada carving paths through the chaos. Finally, Carmine found himself surrounded. Vito stepped into the circle, his pistol raised. Blood streaked his face, his suit torn, but his stance unshakable. "It ends tonight," Vito said. Carmine spat on the ground. "You'll never kill me. Even if you put a bullet in my skull, others will rise. The city will always belong to Torinos." Vito's smile was cold. "Not anymore," a single shot echoed. Carmine crumpled to the ground, lifeless. The yard fell silent. It was over. Lucia stood frozen, her ears ringing, her heart pounding. She had just watched one king fall and realized another still stood, one who now owned not just the city, but her life. Ava ran back into the yard, her face streaked with tears, and threw her arms around her. Lucia clung to her desperately, both of them shaking, both of them alive. Vito holstered his gun and walked to them. He studied Lucia, his gaze lingering on the pistol still trembling in her hand. "You saved me twice now," he said softly. "And tonight, you saved yourself." Lucia's knees nearly buckled. She wanted to scream, to weep, to run, but when his hand touched her face, steady and warm, she realized the truth she couldn't deny. There was no running anymore. She belonged here, whether she chose it or not. 2 weeks later, Rosario's glowed like a jewel in the heart of the city. Its shattered windows had been replaced, its cracked tiles polished, its walls repainted. To anyone walking in from the street, it looked like nothing more than a neighborhood restaurant reborn. But Lucia knew better. This was no longer just a restaurant. It was a fortress, a throne room, the place where everything had begun, and everything had ended. She stood at table 4, the center of the room, smoothing the linen cloth with trembling fingers. The table where Don Vito Castellano had once nearly raised a poisoned glass. The table where she had whispered, "There's a drug in your drink." Her life had never been the same. "Stop fussing." Maria's warm voice cut through her thoughts. The owner bustled past, smiling like she always did, but her eyes flicked toward the suited men stationed discreetly in every corner. They weren't busboys. They weren't waiters. They were Castellano soldiers. Lucia smiled faintly. "Habit. Habits keep you alive," Maria said softly, squeezing her shoulder before moving on. The doors opened. A hush fell over the room. Don Vito entered. He wore no armor, no visible scars from Chicago, but his presence filled the restaurant like fire fills a hearth. His men flanked him, but they were unnecessary. Everyone who mattered already knew. Carmine Torino was dead, and the Castellanos ruled unchallenged. Lucia's heart skipped. She told herself it was fear. She told herself it was the weight of everything she'd done. But when his eyes found hers, she knew it was something else. "Bella," he said warmly as he reached the table. "Rosario's shines again. Just like you." Her cheeks flushed, but before she could answer, Eva appeared from the kitchen carrying a tray. She wore the apron awkwardly, clearly out of place but alive. That was what mattered. Alive. Eva set the tray down with more force than necessary, her eyes avoiding Vito. She muttered, "Dinner's ready," before slipping back into the kitchen. Lucia's chest tightened. They were still sisters, but something fragile had cracked between them. Vito watched her go, then turned back to Lucia. His smile was faint, knowing. She'll understand. In time. Lucia shook her head. She doesn't want to understand. She wants to forget. And you? Vito asked softly. Do you? She looked at him, at the man who had dragged her into this world, the man she had saved and who had saved her in return. She thought of Lorenzo's body hitting the dirt. She thought of Carmine's last breath. She thought of the ring sitting heavy on her finger, the Castellano crest glinting in the candlelight. No, she whispered. I don't forget. Not anymore. His eyes softened. For the first time, she saw not just the king of shadows, but the man beneath. The man who bore scars invisible to the world. Then your family, he said simply. Dom appeared at his side, pale eyes as sharp as ever. He set a glass of wine before Vito, then another before her. His voice was cool. Everything is ready. The city bows again. Vito nodded. Good. Tonight we celebrate. He raised his glass. The restaurant hushed, all eyes turning to him. Lucia's breath caught. This was the moment. The ritual. The toast. The word that had almost killed him weeks ago. Her hand trembled around her glass. She remembered the first night, her whisper against his ear. Don't talk. Vito's eyes met hers. He smiled faintly, knowingly. Salute, he said. The word no longer froze her blood. This time she lifted her glass with him. Salute. Their glasses clinked, and the sound rang like a bell through Rosario's. Soft, final, binding. Eva stood in the kitchen doorway watching. Her face was pale, unreadable. But she didn't stop them. Lucia sipped, the wine warm on her tongue. She had thought once that saving his life had destroyed hers. But now, as Vito's hand brushed hers beneath the table, steady and strong, she realized the truth. Her old life had ended that night, yes, but a new one had begun. A dangerous one, a bloody one, but one where she mattered. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was Castellano. Outside, the city roared with ordinary life. Cars, laughter, arguments, dreams. People rushing through their evenings with no idea of the war that had nearly burned their streets. Inside Rosario's, under candlelight and shadow, a bond was sealed forever. Lucia had learned the first rule of Vito's world. Once you were family forever. Whether that was a promise or a threat didn't matter anymore, because she chose to see it as both. And she lifted her glass again, smiling faintly. Salute.